The Team Fortress 2 comics are legitimately my favorite comic series of all time. Granted, to me, their only real competition are some Godzilla ones and the Ninjago graphic novels. You know, I'm not much of a comic guy, but their mix of world building, humor, and intriguing storytelling are really what makes them so enjoyable to many. With the series finally getting its last issue after almost 8 years, and with said issue covering a lot of interesting themes to learn from, the most important being time, and how you should go about spending it. We'll take a look at what the Team Fortress comics have to say about spending time, whether it's spending time with others, continuing to live life despite wasting so much time, how not to spend time, and what happens when you spend time with someone else. Real quick though, I highly recommend you read the comics first. Although I'll do my best to explain the lore and characters to someone who hasn't read it, I can't explain it all, and I really think you should read them because they are legitimately great. There also will be spoilers in this video, so if you've read up to like issue 6 and have not read issue 7 yet, don't watch this video. Read it first, cry because the ending is so sweet, and then come back to this video. Like I said, it's a great balance of comedy and storytelling. And if you've played Team Fortress 2 before, and especially if you loved it, you really should read them, because you'll think about it forever. TeamFortress2.com. Go to comics and TF Comics. These ones right here, not the update ones. It's about 2 or so hours of read, but I'd say it's time well spent. Because they're a lot more interesting than you would think coming from a comic series whose lore is that Abraham Lincoln invented stairs, didn't understand it, and then did the world's first rocket jump. Now, while Soldier, Pyro, Demo, Heavy, Engineer, Medic, Sniper, and especially Spy all have their moments and decently interesting themes, really to me the people who stood out the most and who we'll be covering in this video are Scout, Miss Pauling, the Administrator, and Saxon Hale. These 4 have important lessons taught on time usage that I think we can really learn from. And no, I'm not kidding, I'm being serious. The Team Fortress 2 comics have some life-changing advice to abide by, and I'll prove it, starting with Scout's main arc throughout the comic series is about progression. It's about moving on from being a young and dumb kid and growing up to be your own man. Scout has always been obsessed with Miss Pauling for multiple years. In Expiration Date, which is canon to the TF2 comics, he says he likes women who smell nice, have their glasses slightly crooked, and can read. High standards. Throughout the comic series and the update comic series, he's basically thirsting for Pauling every chance he gets. Yet in the final issue, when the team and Pauling fly to TF Industries headquarters, Scout sees just how vast the world is and realizes that there are other women in the world, not just Pauling. This sounds weird, but it's Scout. He's not very bright. That's a great and mature realization for this character. As Pauling points out, statistically speaking, because there are so many other people out there, you'll have multiple chances to get to know them, and you can decide which kind of person is best for you. But you'll never get that chance if you're like Scout and keep chasing a girl who isn't even into guys for several years on end. Scout realizes that there are other fish in the sea. Fishes in the sea that he slept with and has 4 kids across multiple wives now. Either way, whether your relationship is not a real one, like with Scout and Pauling, or a tough breakup you just went through, there is another side to the story, and you shouldn't let it get to your head that just because one of them went wrong, that all of your chances are gone. If Scout from Team Fortress 2 could mature up and realize the error of his ways, Scout, the thirstiest guy in TF2 lore, reformed, then I think there's hope for everyone. So that's Scout's first theme, being moving on from someone else. There's more time to spend on someone just right for you, or multiple people in this case. But he also has a theme of spending time on the people who you used to spend time with. That's his second theme. After 7 years of his friends having presumably uninteresting lives, seeing how their employers being the Administrator is dead and Pauling is gone, Scout decides to hold a Smissmas, which is TF2 Christmas, party with his former friends and their family members. Yeah, if you can even count this as a family member, I don't know. He wants to spend Smissmas with his friends and dad, not just his kids. Because although you don't do what you're doing right now forever, that doesn't mean you can't spend some time with the ones who are important to you. Scout and his big dumb family of mercenaries have a grand old party that they'll remember for years, and it's very wholesome. Pyro even brought his dog. He even takes the time to break the 4th wall and thank you, the player, for sticking through everything. The controversial updates, the botting years, and the lack of updates, and still supporting the game. By realizing that chasing Pauling was a lost cause, and to use that time to start a family, and also to spend that time with his friends, Scout got one of the two good endings, if you will, of the 4 characters here. Spend the time to find the right people for you, and spend your time with those close to you who are special, and spend that time waking up and realizing that there's other fish in the sea. Even though Scout is supposed to die 8 years later according to God himself. Pauling is a tragic character. She spent most of her life from childhood to her early 20s or even 30s, taking bribes, lying, framing, assassinating, or whatever, just because those were the administrator's orders. Orders which she never knew what the purpose of was. She just did it because this was the only life she knew. And as revealed in the final issue, the prospect of promotion is pretty appealing to her. When we find out that the administrator doesn't even have a plan to take over the world and is just at the center of the Team Fortress 2 lore, and everything happening in it started just because she held a grudge against Zephaniah Man, it's incredibly disappointing and underwhelming to Pauling, to the point where, for the first time in her life, Pauling lies to the administrator. The administrator dies with the man she despised so much. This is insane. Pauling just wasted 20 or 30 years of her life on nothing. Promotion? Yeah, right. Second in command? Command of what? This goop? Later, we see that Pauling has the same colored dust around her as the goopy fellows once had in the previous panels, which implies she probably spent some time there just processing what happened. Again, this is the woman she spent everything on, and she just vanished into goop before your own eyes, when she had the chance to extend her life just seconds earlier. What has to be her lowest moments? A moment where she could easily make a hasty decision, like, I don't know, use all that Australian to take over the world or become the next administrator, or as Engineer says, do whatever she wants. She rejects all those desires and takes Engineer's advice to bury the remaining Australium so that no one will ever get the chance to use it again. She does not use the remaining Australium for greed. She does not walk down the same path as the administrator. She ensures no one else will be consumed by the raw power of the element. What do you do when you've wasted decades on your life for nothing? What do you do when you're at rock bottom? According to Pauling, you do the right thing first, then you move on and start a new life. And that's it. For the most part, it's that simple. After all, sure, it sucks to see your youthful days go by, but as we'll see with a different character, just because you're older doesn't mean you can't do what you love and can't still have fun. It's a very mature and telling part of her character, that in her lowest moment, she decides to do the right thing and leave this life of fallacies behind and do something different with her life. And while we don't get to see that new life, it's up to interpretation. Maybe she found someone special, maybe she lives alone somewhere, private and peacefully, maybe she will become the next administrator after all, although I doubt that because that'd be a weird step backwards, which Valve's writing generally doesn't do. Pauling's theme is about persevering despite wasted time. It's okay to feel like you've wasted time, or even know it damn well. I'm sure we all have. But don't let that sad reality let you to continue wasting your time by doing nothing. Do something fun, or spend that time with others, like Scout. And even though she committed to leaving this life behind, as we never see her since 1972 in the comics, and even though she wants to separate herself from her wasted life at TF Industries, she still has a soft spot for the mercenaries. Just like her, these mercenaries were all cogs in an incomprehensible machine, and they showed respect and kindness throughout their times, especially Engineer. Hence why she gifts them a mega turkey for this Christmas dinner. It's a nice gesture of kindness, given that despite wanting to do nothing with her old life, she can accept that they happened because she's living a better life now. The story of the Administrator is essentially a twisted Batman origin story, down to the cover art of this issue. While it's never directly stated, we can infer that Zephaniah Man killed the Administrator's parents. By the way, she has multiple aliases, but we'll just call it the Administrator. The trauma of losing both her parents at a young age destroyed her forever, and she would deal with it in an unhealthy way for the next 100 years. In summary, Zephaniah Man, father of Redmond, Plutarch, and Grey, killed the Administrator's parents, likely for reasons relating to gaining more power and wealth. As time went on, the Administrator managed to become a glorified babysitter for the two brothers for the next few decades. The administrator's job was to raise and train the two sons Zephaniah and Man cared about, being Redman and Plutarch, to become the next heir to the Man family name. Only the best of the two brothers could become the next worthy heir. However, this is the same man that killed the administrator's parents, and she knew that damn well. Zephaniah Man just put the women whose parents he killed a few decades earlier and is out for revenge to look after his own sons, so one of them could be in charge and become his next successor, and he could finally be proud of one of them. The administrator planned this from the start. She wanted to pain Zephaniah Man as much as she could, so she kept hiring mercenaries from both sides to fight in an infinite stalemate so that neither could ever best one another, and Zephaniah Man could never have a true successor. She tells Zephaniah Man all of this, and it's the last thing he hears. The administrator takes great pride and pleasure in his death. I mean, just look at that painting. But the more time passes, the more mundane her celebration of his death becomes to her. Because of course it does. She's doing nothing but celebrating his death. Your life should be more than just celebrating someone's death. As we've learned with Scout, you can't do what you're doing right now forever. Eventually, you're going to have to move on and become a different person, like Scout or Pauline did. But because of the death of the administrator's parents was so painful for her, she never lost sight of this one and only objective. Eventually, she fulfilled her goal, but that was that. There was no family to celebrate this death with. She didn't have a dog. She didn't have a baboon. She probably had multiple very lonely Smithsmisses, and because she doesn't know what to do with her life, she attempts to give up. It's not until Grey Man reveals to her that the so-called gold she inherited from Zephaniah Man is capable of extending someone's life, that the administrator's one and only goal, to torture Zephaniah Man for as long as possible, continues. She digs up Zephaniah's grave to extend his and her own life so he can be pained by seeing his two sons fight forever, while the administrator can continue to taunt him. The saddest part is that the administrator doesn't even remember why she has a grudge against Zephaniah Man to begin with, after a century of this whole life extension charade. Was any of it really worth it? To the administrator, sure, but that's because she's crazy. According to Pauline, who we've seen is a rational human being, no, of course not. Of course it wasn't worth it. This is not a healthy way to deal with trauma. Torturing the man who killed your parents for a century is not a healthy way to deal with what happened in your past. You're letting this grudge grow and infect others. And forcing the two brothers' companies, Red and Blue, to continue fighting for an eternity while Zephaniah Man has to watch, pained that neither will ever win or do anything notable, the administrator led hundreds, possibly thousands, of mercenaries to fight endlessly for nothing. Our mercenaries, the team we see in Team Fortress 2, fought and risked their lives because a crazed woman couldn't seek therapy, and let this grudge grow into something bigger than it should have been. Sure, the mercenaries got paid, so they got something out of it, but of course they got paid. They wouldn't do the job without it. Even the life-extending element that is Australium has its limits. There's only so much of it in the Team Fortress world. Even Soldier's Cave of Australium is probably the last amount of Australium that there ever is. At the end of the day, even in the TF2 universe, no one lives forever. That's why you need to spend the limited time that we have now on our families and friends, the way the Scout and TF2 mercenaries did. The pain from your past must be something you grow from. It'll never go away, but you must move on from it. In short, get therapy if you're crazy, and spend your time with the special people in your life, so you can celebrate something together, because if you don't, you turn into goop. That leads us to our last person, which we'll look at today. Saxon Hale is a surprisingly and interestingly deep character. Like Saxon Hale, just look at him. His chest hair is the shape of Australia. And I kid you not, when I first saw Saxon, I thought he was a younger, buff version of Soldier. I know, I'm stupid, but it's not my fault he's so handsome and muscular. It blinded me. But he's more complex than just a dumb muscle guy. Saxon Hale, while being a funny guy who runs a munitions company, wants to do something else, and that something else is punching animals! You see, running Manco, the in-game store, and the place where the mercenaries get their weapons from, while it was a good business, there's a reason why he punched this Yeti. It's fun to him. He loves the risk and reward of fighting this stupid thing. I'm sure we're all like this in some way, especially if you do play TF2. You have your responsibilities, your jobs, but it's not necessarily fun, and it certainly doesn't seem that fun to Hale. He hates having sensible conversations with hippies. That's why he punches animals in his spare time. It's a hobby, like how Team Fortress 2 is our hobby. But eventually, you need to let go of one or the other. Especially as you're going to reach retirement age, you're going to have to settle down and choose something to do for the rest of your life until you eventually pass away. While running Manco made sense to Hale in his youth to get money to punch Monkey, what brought him happiness was a thrill-seeking action that someone else appreciated, Margaret. Throughout the TF Comics series, Margaret has shown to be the only person who can even match Hale's skills. However, Hale never committed to a relationship with her because he decided to continue running his family business, Manco, instead. Eventually, Margaret, or Maggie, and Mags, as Hale calls her, goes to marry 4 different men, who are similar to Hale but never survived more than a week in the same conditions that Saxon and Maggie had survived several times before. Margaret wants to get Manco back to Hale after he lost control of it to Grey Man, thanks to Olivia. Because if Hale gets his company back and gives it to someone he trusts, then maybe he can spend that time with Maggie instead. But Hale is shown to be committed to his company. Manco is a generational business, and he doesn't want to give it up. That's why Margaret is so disappointed when Saxon reveals that he's still committed to Manco, even though Maggie and Saxon just bonded over their action-packed past and mutual hatred of hippies, and Maggie thought he would reconnect with her. He didn't, and for the next 7 years, he wouldn't. Saxon Hale had to abandon what he loved doing, punching animals, yeah! To continue running Manco, and he's sick of it now. Holy crap, he's drinking. That's how bad it is. He wants to return to his old life and realizes that Margaret was the only person who could match his caliber of pure animal punching awesomeness, and as someone who he never should have left for a stinking munitions company that could easily be run by someone else for a change. That's why he lets Bidwell and Reddy to fight over who gets control of Manco as he retires. Not before letting Olivia go as well. Eventually, running a company, just like doing mercenary work or any other job, gets old. He's an old man now, and wants to look for the next best thing. He feels empty despite all his trophies, because who is he supposed to share it with? His family? What family? Bidwell, Reddy, and Olivia are not much of a friend nor family, more so companions, and he knows that as well as we do. That's why he goes back to Margaret and reunites and settles down with her. Both can live the rest of their lives doing what they love. Punching animals, yeah! Remember, one of the themes of this series is about life and how you spend that time in your life. They literally have life extension machines, and yet people still die anyway, because that correlates to reality. You don't do what you're doing right now forever. Spend that time wisely. You can't cheat death. We all perish eventually. That's why, while we're on this earth, while we're still alive, we should spend that time with someone else. Sure, even if we're with someone else, we don't live forever, and we don't spend that time forever, but if you don't spend that time with someone else, and you spend it for the wrong reasons, you become the administrator, a frail old woman already on her way out, with no fancy funeral, and only one person who is implied to care for her death. And so, as a reward for realizing this, Hale gets to spend the rest of his time with his one true love, Margaret, or Maggie, or Mags, whatever the hell. And so Saxon Hale himself gets the honor of the first and last words ever spoken in the Team Fortress comic series. What's the matter, Mags? You wanna live forever? What's the matter, Mags? You wanna live forever?